Everyone. Hey, we're about to get started this morning. Rings are running a little bit hectic, a little bit behind, a little bit crazy for us, but the technology is technologying, right? And we're doing our thing to try to combat that, but we're going to do our thing. Good morning, gentlemen. We got Pete in the
Morning.
room. We got Paz is here with us. We give everybody an opportunity to introduce themselves. But before we do, we got to do our thing. So here we go. Hey, everybody. So, man, it's been a crazy one already this morning. This platform, while I enjoy it to such a high degree, it is proven to be one tricky thing to work with. But good morning. So we got Paz in the room. Looks like we got Pete trying to jump in. Yeah, yeah,
I'm
and
here
Pete saying
for you.
that Restream is awful. It's getting it works sometimes and it doesn't work. Pete's saying that it's been trying to get in for 15 minutes. He was here. He said he heard me say hello, and then it went dark on him. So he's in the room, but it's looking like it's not letting him. Is doing so. I'm gonna let him deal with that. We're gonna hopefully let the system reboot itself, if anything. Hopefully we can get him to reset again.
But I got your back until our brother Pete can join us.
Yes, sir, man. So anyway, man, Paz, why don't you do me a solid, brother, while Pete's trying to figure his thing out and everything. Man, why don't you tell the people who you are, what you do? Welcome to the show, family.
Oh, no problem. My name is Paz Simpson, most commonly known as the Happiness Engineer. I am the LDP, which is the lead dream protector for Big Happy Consultants. We do not have a CEO because we have an LDP. We say that every business is a dream and every business owner is a dreamer. So we protect the dream and the dreamer. We do events, we do consulting, and do everything that it takes so that other people can smile big and enjoy.
Bet that, man. Look, man, I gotta tell the people, man, this is a long time coming, Doc. This is a long time coming. I remember when I first started my personal journey in this space. I'm going to say I started Evolution Magazine 2010, 2012, I think it was 2012, my first magazine project, right? And I bumped into you all maybe about 2 years later, 3 years later. I had just come back from Texas and everything, man. And that's when I met you, and you were doing some great things in the city of Allentown, man. At that time, I used to just see you walking, man, and we was always downtown at the same time. At
Yes,
the
sir.
same time, yo,
Yes,
I
sir.
see you. I see you. Hey, man, we get to have a quick pilot, get a quick opportunity to chat, man, and then, it go our ways. But, bro, I watched how your development over here, and what's best about it is that even though we never really had that we've always had those moments of politics, having those conversations, but it was always, man, I mean, I see you, I'm encouraging you, keep going. That's what it was like, man. That's what it's been like
Yes.
for the last decade almost, man. of just seeing you, keep going, bruh. I see you, bruh. I see you in that. And then this is just one of those moments where opportunity and chance, and I'm gonna say chance, opportunity has allowed itself. A couple of weeks ago, I had the opportunity of being on your podcast,
Yes, sir.
and I was trying, and I was grateful for that because it was the culmination of a lot of that. I see you, bruh. I see you working. I see you putting that work in. I see you out here, doing the difference in the community. We kind of operate in a similar space. We got like our corporate selves or the self that we're putting out here trying to make a change in the business community, while also still having our foot into the community and everything. And that was kind of the parallel that I learned about you, and we kind of have that same parallel going on in our lives. And so sitting on your podcast on a couple weeks ago was just like, man, I could get this brother up on a Monday morning, get him on the show and everything. We got some other things in the works, but I
Yes,
wanted
sir.
to I wanted to get you on because today's topic, man, really kind of hits in to what we were just talking about, which was how to build long-term, loyal connections, right? And long-term meaning we're playing the long game, right? We're not out here
Yeah.
trying to speed past everything, and so we've got some history both here on the East Coast, but most people don't. Let me tell you how networking is we got a lot of connections in common and operating in the same spaces on the West Coast,
Yes, sir.
which really blew my mind because that's how you know you're networking. Because when you pop up in something with somebody, it was like, how did he pop up in this circle over here? And we end up in the same space, but two distinctly different routes to get there, right? And
Yes,
so
sir.
today's show we're going to kind of get into that, man. But what I'm loving, Doc, is this idea that things aren't always perfect in the long term. The long term, you're going to have peaks and valleys, and most people want to plateau, but you never really want to plateau because plateauing means that you're stagnant. You want to see some
Yes,
ups and
sir.
downs and everything. And so today's conversation is going to kind of be wrapped up in that. But before we get into it, right? Um, this is what I would like to see if we can do this before we get into the conversation is when because I'm trying to figure out my words here. So you operate in a couple different worlds, right? And I love that. And so before we get started, why don't you tell the people kind of the two worlds that you operate in, and then from there we're going to lean into the conversation. So two worlds. What are you doing in the community, and what are you doing for the business world? And we'll get into the conversation.
Yes. So in the community, it's funny, right? Because it all stems with the same thing. I always say poverty is violence.
Mm,
Um, what I what I notice is that when we're dealing with violence prevention, we're always dealing in gun violence and gang violence. All of those are symptoms of the actual cause, which is poverty. So my business and my nonprofits all focus on ending poverty, providing opportunity, getting us to
mm,
think bigger, right? Because poverty isn't about dollars and cents. And I can say that because my mother was a welfare mom, right?
mhm,
But I graduated from Moravian Academy. I was the first black kid to go to Moravian Academy, which is one of the top prep schools in our area. And I got a degree from Lehigh University because she didn't see life the way others saw it. All of my brothers and sisters went to prep school while my mom was on welfare. You know what I mean? Like all of
mhm,
us had college degrees because she saw greatness in a different way. And we're all great in our own ways. My one brother, he's the only worker. He's the only one with a job, I should say. Um, but he's the GM for Hertz Rent a Car in New York City. He
mhm,
also at one time when he was in cooking, He was the head chef for the Meadowlands. So he's still always been at the top. But he's the only worker bee. My youngest brother, is a professional juggler. He's world renowned as the hip hop juggler, right? He's in the Guinness Book of World Records because he was the youngest person to juggle 8 beanbags. My mom spurred out greatness because that's all she saw. No matter, even though we were growing up in Harlem in the 80s and the drug epidemic, my mom still only saw greatness and only created greatness around us, and it's different, because when we watch things like the Central Park Five, I've known Yusef Salam since I was probably like 8 or 9, you know, all of them, you know, or great friends of mine. Antron McCrae was the one that stays off the camera. He was on his way to my house when that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, we were in school together. Like it, so I realized early that without having real money or access to real money, life changes. Antron pled guilty, not because he was guilty, and you see, life showed later that these young men were always innocent, but because he couldn't afford good representation.
Mm.
He would have been a professional baseball player. The Mets were recruiting him from 7th grade. He was amazing at baseball, but no one will know that story because of poverty. I can keep giving you uh, example after example. From ages 13 to 17, I lost a friend, someone close to me, every week in gun or
Mm-hmm.
gang violence. Right, but everybody was trying to stop the gun violence, stop the gang violence. I'm like, everyone's selling drugs because they don't have money. They don't have they don't have money. They don't have opportunity, and no one's thinking outside the box. So we
Come.
had to increase the way that they're thinking. So now in our community, I teach entrepreneurship and I teach chess. Right? They're like chess. I teach chess to the elementary school students. Started from kindergarten. I teach chess because we need them to be able to plan and to think more than one step ahead.
Yes, sir.
They If they can learn to play chess at an early age, right? They can learn to think, plan, strategize. We teach chess differently because we teach the pawn or the people, right? So you're not so willing to sacrifice the people. And you're also letting them know that any person, right, if they can get across the board, they can become anything they want to, right? Because once you get across the board, you can become anything but the king. You can be the queen, you can be the pawn, you can be a bishop, you can be a knight, so forth and so on. And then we teach entrepreneurship. Um, we start at whatever age you feel. My youngest entrepreneur that we had was 4 years old. She's now 6. We teach them early. And the reason we do is because if I teach you how to make a dollar, a drug dealer cannot trick you into taking a dollar. Let me repeat that for your people again. If I
Mm-hmm.
teach you how to make a dollar, a drug dealer or cannot trick you into taking a dollar. See, they trick us into taking dollars because they tell us how they care for us. They provide things that your parents can't do. Right? My mom was a welfare mom, so she's never bought me a pair of Jordans. The streets did. Right? So that's how they get you. They buy you things your parents can't get. They do
Mm-hmm.
things for you in a sense that people think is love, but it's entrapment, right? Because by the time you realize how deep you're in, you can't go.
Mm.
But if I if I teach you how to make a dollar, right? Then when a drug dealer offers you to do this or to do that, you already know how to make a dollar, right? My 18-year-old is going through his years of rebellion. Everybody goes through it. And I laughed the other day because someone's like, he acts like you, but he won't act like you. And
Mm.
we had Juneteenth in our city, and there, during Juneteenth, you can be vendors. And my son, even though we weren't speaking at the time, and I'm honest enough to say that, we weren't speaking at the time. We wound up getting set up with vending spots right next to each other. How God works to mend defenses. We got set up with vending spots right next to each other. His friends was coming to talk to me. My son was still being stubborn, but then they needed my help. So he sent his friend over to ask for my help, and I said, I cannot help this young man. He's my son. He needs to come ask. But when I called his mother later, I laughed and I said, no matter what, that young man has been given a foundation so he can always go back to make money. I showed my kids at age 5 and 6 that we can take a case of water and turn it into $2,000, right? By
Mhm.
buying one case of water, and we sold the case of water. Then you gotta re-up, right? You gotta reinvest, and we kept reinvesting until they had $2,000. They had enough money in their pocket to buy all their own school clothes and take their mom on vacation. Little things that we can teach our kids.
For
But
sure.
poverty, right? Poverty is violence, right? When we
Mm.
don't know better, we talk about um, being our children dealing with war situations. Like kids that grow up in poverty grow up with more PTSD, right? Post traumatic syndrome than anyone else. So by addressing the violence, which is poverty, we get to make a difference. And then my business is, you know, we create solutions, right? Big happy consultants. Most business owners don't know. So George Fraser said to me, a great man knows what he knows what he doesn't know, but more importantly, knows what he don't know.
Hmm.
All right. And most businesses go through life not knowing what they don't know. They fall, they trip.
Hmm. Oh man, we lost Paz again, man. I'm sorry, everybody. This app is deciding that it wants to do its own thing today, but we lost him in the middle of his conversation. But look, today's conversation is about building long-term connections and long-term loyal connections, right? And this is one of those kind of things that over time things begin to develop, and so one of the craziest things that you kind of have to look at as you begin to explore the idea. And the reason why I wanted to have him on is he and I have been connected for somewhere, I'm going to say, the better part of 10 years. And there's a couple of key things that came out of nurturing and developing the relationship that is the relationship that I have with him. And one of so kind of going there, the conversation is really about building on building blocks, right? And building blocks aren't necessary. Like when you're building a foundation, the foundation is the only part of the building that you cannot see, yet it's the most important part of the building, because without the foundation, nothing, you don't have anything to stand or anything to go. And one of the unique things about a skyscraper I learned in this process was that for just about as high as the skyscraper is going up, the foundation and the things that support the building have to go deep. And so kind of when you're building network, right, it kind of, when you're laying that foundation of building long-term networking relationships, right, there's a couple of key things. Number one is trust is the cornerstone of all connection, right? Is that know, like, and trust. You've heard us talk about that know, like, and trust process time and time and time again. It's one of those things that um that's so foundational that it without it, that know, like, and trust. You know that there are lots of people that may like you, that may know you, but not necessarily trust you. And then there are people in my circle that I don't necessarily like, or I don't necessarily know, but for some godforsaken reason, no matter how bad they rub me, I know I can trust them. And that's a weird place to be, because you're not going to get along with everyone, but you know that these individuals they built their network, and they went through the process of building it. And although you don't have a personal relationship with them, you know you can trust that they're going to do or be who they are, right? And so the idea of building a foundation of trust as a cornerstone of your networking experience, right, is learning the difference between transactional and transformational relationship. I have decided over the course of, especially over the course of the last, I'm going to say the last year or so, to kind of begin to change the dynamic of the types of relationships that I'm building over the transactional kind. Um, I've actually recently walked away from some business because I no longer want to be in a place of transactional relationships when it comes to building network or building my relationship, my business. I want my business to be intentional, and through intentionality, I want that thing to be transformative. And so, as I'm developing some of these new programs within the companies, um, I really wanted to get away from the idea that at the end game, the reason why I'm here is because there has to be a transaction that has to happen eventually. You know, we talk about things that not every conversation is a transaction, but every conversation or is an opportunity. And I really want people to hone in on that, because every transactional relationship becomes that. And when there's transactional relationships that are developed, what happens is when the transactions no longer benefit the necessary parties, the relationship dissolves. And it's through those transactions that now, when someone's not happy with you, right? When someone's not happy with you, then those transactions become more important, right? And so when they're no longer happy with you, then when you can't give them something, or they can't get something from you, they begin to go on a negative, they go on this negativity push. And so those transactional relationships then really begin to have an impact on your long-term business and your long-term network. And so what you'll see is, you'll see people come and they'll go, and they'll come and they'll pop up, and they'll pop up and go. And I'm reminded of something that I've been a part of now since I think, if you guys know me, you guys will know who Royal Brown is to my life. Roy and uh I started chilling with Royal, connecting with Royal back when I was still doing mortgages. That's man, Rubiana's 16. So if Rubiana's 16, um if Rubiana's 16, it has to be all of 14 years ago. Maybe even, I'm going to even dare to say 15 years ago is when I had my first interaction with Royal. And then over time, Royal was actually at Starters Riverport when I held my first LinkedIn boot camp. And that was well over a decade. That was almost 15 years ago, 13 years ago. But the point I'm making is that he and I have been in a communicate. I mean, he's been a business owner. He's been a key player in different phases of my life. And now we've recently started really pulling out. We started a group. The professionals group is probably since 2018 or something like that, 2018, 2019. And so
Yes,
the
sir.
point I'm making with that is that that's something that I have been working on for all this time and what have you. And just recently, you know, he and I sat down and was like, man, we've tried to do this on so many different occasions before. The difference between then and now is that my businesses are stronger, right? And as a result of my businesses being stronger and my network being proven a little bit, it's now taking off. And now there's a whole new realm of opportunities that have opened up. And I said that is because that was not a transactional relationship. that was something that went through the fire, man. We went through a lot of things, some ups and downs and everything. I've seen so many different phases of Royal, right? But the point I'm making with that, guys, is that transactional relationships, they come and go, they're fleeting. But when you're trying to build network, your network right now, the most important thing is those transitionals, and those are the ones that are going to have the longer impact, or those transformational relationships are going to have those longer impacts, right? And so
Can I
consistency. Go ahead, brother.
can I throw some input in here? I apologize. This technology was crazy. I fought back to get
Yeah,
that.
it's doing it.
But
It's doing the thing, right?
yes, but I love what you're talking about. Transactional relationships are necessary for business, but not necessary for the business owner. Right? Let me
Mm,
be clear about that. Right? You need transactional relationships because we need people to buy. If nobody buys, then we have no business. We have a great hobby, right? Because the only difference between a business and a hobby is somebody's getting paid. If you
go.
are running a business and you are never getting paid, you just have a very well put together hobby, right? So the business needs
Understood.
to get paid, right? But the business
Understood.
owner, right, needs to grow. So he or she needs transformational relationships. Let me give you an example, right? You talk about our friends on the West Coast, right? Greg Reed, right? Greg Reed is my big brother. You know, he runs Secret Knock, which is one of the biggest conference according to Forbes magazine. He's written 56, bestsellers, and counting, right? Greg Reed, how we started was him actually correcting me as a orator, right? We were on a call, a Think and Grow Rich call by the Napoleon Hill Foundation. Greg gave his telephone number. At the end of the call, I called him really quickly and said, my name is Paz. I don't need anything. I don't want anything. I just want you to pick up my phone call as quickly as you did today, the next time I call. And he said, yes, I sure will. And before he can think about anything else, I hung up. Didn't want to give him
Mm,
anything else to think about. You know, that relationship, build it because God rest his soul, Hilliard Baldwin, who was Greg's business manager and best friend and business partner at the time. Hilliard reached out to me, getting to know me and realized his father was a Lehigh grad. I am also a Lehigh University grad, and but I am the last of the engineers, right? Lehigh's mascot is now the Mountain Hawk. My graduating class is the last graduating class as the Lehigh Engineers when we still had the train as our mascot. So we got to laugh about the change and create commonality, right?
mm,
That is a key word, commonality. What do we have in common, right? Where can we meet in a similar space? And if you are on the other side, if you're on the upper end of the totem pole, because most people think the top of the totem, the bottom of the totem pole is um the weak part there, but that's actually the strong point. So if you're on the totem pole, your goal for anyone who is a superhero, right? We say leverage your superheroes. So a superhero is anybody that's doing something you personally cannot do at that moment, right? They may have more money than you, not always. They
mhm,
may have they may have better relationships than you, right? They may have more knowledge than you. Whatever it is, they have something you just don't have, right? And you don't have it right now. So leveraging your superheroes. So for Greg, he had a knowledge of writing books. We're all authors now. right? Greg was able to teach me how to get published. I didn't want to self-publish. I wanted a publisher. So he was able to teach me that. In the midst of teaching me that, I always asked one question: how may I serve you? Right? We always want something, but we don't always give something. So, one way to make sure that your relationships become lasting and transformational is to
Mm,
be remembered for your service. And it doesn't mean your business's service, right?
yeah,
Every one of these people that you've met across the world that you met and told you, hey, Paz, every one of them can give you a story of my service to them personally,
is there understood, man?
right?
It's funny because you're that Greg, man. I there's a quote that I just put on a post a couple of days ago. Um, that hit me because I was meditating and I was just kind of asking God. I was like, man, I got it. My brain is getting fried here. I got so much on my plate. I'm frustrated. Things are going. This is one of those crazy places. Things are going well and bad at the same time, right? And I'm
Mm-hmm. Been
frustrated.
there.
I'm I'm watching the business grow. I'm watching all these different things. I'm here, I'm there, and I'm frustrated. I'm like, why am I frustrated? The clinic, the mental health clinic, the nonprofit is growing and expanding. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. The businesses are starting to expand and I'm like, things are not where I want them to be, but they're darn sure not where they used to be. And all I can remember is Lane's voice in my head from about 12 years ago, bro. When he said to me, he goes, man, Darnell, there's going to come a point in your business where you're going to have to be selfish in order to be selfless, right? But that does not mean you have to be like tight, right? And I was thinking about, well, how did that didn't make sense at the time. And then all of a sudden, I'm looking around and I saw what it meant to be there. There's this moment, there's going to come this moment where your time, your energy, your focus, and all those things are going to happen. Is you're going to get to that point where you're going to have to focus on those those things, because you not only have yourself to worry about and your family, but you're going to be responsible for other people and their families. It is a whole different world. I realize this now. It's a whole different world when you're managing a business to not just take care of and provide for your own, but you're responsible for taking care of other people's families, right?
That
And
is huge.
but Greg ended up on the cover of my Metro magazine and his story because of my relationship with Lane. So that's how I got in touch with him. It was because that's
Yeah.
Greg's Lane's mentor. And
Yes,
here
Lane
we
Etheridge,
are.
my brother.
And so here we are. And Lane was actually featured as as a feature in my 2014 edition of Evolution magazine. I think it was 2 months or 3 months before Sandra was featured in
Mm.
Evolution
All people
magazine,
I love.
right? And so what I'm getting at, guys, is that these are transformational relationships, because they're not people I talk to every day. They're not people I see every day. They're not people that that your everyday experience with, but they have impact. They have a profound impact in your business. But when you're building network, right? You have to really use this as a foundation, because for as big as what your business to be, your network has to run just as deep. And if your network does not run equally as deep, you have no foundation. That foundation, you cannot then you'll be the person that's constantly trying to close the next deal versus build the next relationship. Because now
You speaking my
going back to the
language.
here I am. We're years in, decade almost in. We're into this other relationship, and I'm finally starting to reap fruit from seeds planted 10, 12 years ago. And so the goal here, guys, is to build value over time. And I think that I really want people to understand it's the long game. I love that you
Yeah,
brought chess into the conversation. I love that
yeah.
because when I was younger, that was one of the there was a couple of things that Nathaniel Davis put into me. God bless his heart, man. At that time, I hated him for it because I was just a rebellious young man. I didn't see the impact that it would have, but there were a couple of things that my dad did for me, even though he was young himself. My dad was only 16 when they had me. I grew up pretty much with my dad, right?
Hmm.
And there were some goods and some bads. And my a couple of things that my dad taught me early on. He was like, if you want to play sports, right? One of the things he made it happen was you got to learn how to play an instrument. And you need to learn how to read music in order to play that instrument. You just can't play by ear. You need to learn how to read music. You need to know how to do it. My dad was a professional drummer. He could read and write. He could
Hmm.
read music and play a couple of different instruments. The second thing that he taught me was how to play chess. My uncle Kurt would take it further. My uncle Curtis, right, would take it further and like beat up on me till I got really, really good at chess. But that was something that we
Hmm.
actually took time of doing. And then the other one was my 18th birthday present and graduation present was an Amway sales kit. And that's a whole nother story for another day. But the point that I was making
Hey,
about
I
chess,
love him for that. So you an Amway rep too?
yeah, bro. I pay for my part of my undergrad with selling SAH,
So
selling soap,
I
baby,
so
and water treatment
I,
centers.
I what I was the number one. How you think I got through Lehigh? We sold soap to all of the fraternities. Watch.
Bruh, so that was that. But the thing about chess, right, is I learned the strategic thinking through that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I didn't see it now that I'm building this business at this tier where I want to be, right? Is I was so frustrated because I wasn't where I wanted to be. But then I realized through meditation and just prayer, it was like, wait a second, maybe I'm exactly where I need to be. And I'm
Amen.
looking around, right? I'm looking around. I'm like, I am exactly where I need to be. I need to be. I'm not where I want to be, but I look back and I'm like, here's impact, here's impact, here's impact, here's impact, here's impact. And so, but building the foundation of that was building value over time. If you guys have heard me talk about this also, I'm going to there's a book that I'm in the midst of writing that's going to come out in 26 called Building a Value-Based Network.
Hmm.
I'm going to get Joe I'm going to get Joe Fasciano on this podcast in the month of July. But this man is another gentleman that the seed that he planted 12 years ago, 13 years ago, right, is still impacting my life today. He said to always deliver value before asking for value in return. And I thought, man, over time, that's how I developed the company. I'm always the guy. You will never see me in the space where I am I'm on the bottom end of the value exchange, is what I call it. Meaning
Hmm.
you're not going to outvalue me because I'm going to
Yeah,
bring so much value to the conversation, right? I'm going to bring so much value to the conversation that I'm never going to be on the bottom end. And even when I am, I'm going to figure a way out from underneath of that. So even if it's somebody in a better position than I am financially, in reality, they have more finances, but there will never be a relationship that I'll be in where I'm on the bottom end of that value exchange for a longer period of time.
I
I'm going to
love that.
always how to figure, I'm always going to figure out a way how to deliver value, right? And because sometimes value is not always considered currency, but value to me
Yes,
is more important than currency. And
it's
so,
more important. And
so
what I
as we
was
do,
taught, to give you one jewel, what I was taught is to provide more in use value than in
yeah,
dollar value, right? And you'll always be needed and wanted. I'll give it to them
exactly,
again, right? More in use value than in dollar value, then you'll always be
exactly,
needed and wanted. Because there's going to be places and spaces where people have so much money, Like I've hung out with billionaires, right? So they have so much money that the dollar value that you have will never be more important than the use that you provide. Like I've been blessed to be in rooms where, they probably could have bought 5 and 10 passes, but they never could find another pass. Right? You
Copy.
could buy 5 and 10 of me if you could find me, but there's only one me. Right? So we should always be working on our intrinsic value. Like, who are we and what do we bring to the table? I usually say, I don't bring anything to the table. I bring the table so that we can all sit and eat,
Copy.
you know. But,
Copy. But
you
that's
know, go ahead.
it is I tell people that's one of the that's another like another tidbit that I give a lot of people, man. You want to put yourself in a position that your absence is felt,
Hmm.
meaning people it's you're so valuable to that equation that when you take you out of the equation, it's chaos. It's
Yes.
chaos, not in necessarily the negative in a complete negative fashion, right? It's chaotic because you hold such a value space there, right? That your
Yeah.
presence is missed. Period. You bring so much to the table, and that's where my life is right now. I'm finding my life in that space right now, where I'm in that place, right? Where I am in that idea or in that concept where I'm watching spaces that I've been removed from or whatever, and I'm watching everything. And I was like, well, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just lets you know that the value that you brought to the table was not phony. It was true to form, right? But if you're building value over time, one of the key aspects to this, and Paz, I'm gonna ask you this, right? Is offering support, resources, and collaborations as ongoing relationship business tools. It's kind of like this. Excuse me. Offering support. If you know me, I'm going to get. I have given game, if you will. If I'll give a lot of it out for free. I give it a lot, and not necessarily for free, but again, it's always a value exchange, right? Resources. I'm a plethora. I'm a bedrock of resources and collaboration. I've literally started building my new phase of Evolve Group based upon collaboration. Most of my businesses that I own now, right, aren't me owning all of the businesses. It's actually me buying smaller shares into a bunch of different businesses and bringing those businesses underneath of the group, right? So now they have
Yes.
access to my network, right? Versus
Yeah.
me trying to get out here and do everything. And I'm not trying to do everything. And I'm not trying to and so what I've learned is when you're able to do that on a consistent basis, people start seeing that as a value. And so the
Yes.
third part to this, right, is celebrating milestones, man. You guys, I'm sorry if you're going to build long-term relationships and networking, celebrate you. I have for the longest time had this false sense of pride, and I'm gonna say it again, a false sense of pride where I thought I could not be or should not be celebrated for the work that I'm doing, or nor should I celebrate myself for the work that I'm doing. And again, that was another falsity that was ripped out
Uh,
of me a
so
couple of months ago.
so I'm gonna free you. I'm gonna free you and not call it a falsity. It is your genuineness didn't have you focused on, doing it for credit. Because I tell people the only credit I want is credit lines and credit cards, right? Everyone else can have, everyone else can have their name on things, right? But I've realized, as I've been getting a lot more awards lately from people noticing, I'm not some fly by night person. Like I've been in business,
Mm,
since I've never had a real job. Right? Like I've never had a real job. Like if I worked there, it was for your benefit, not for mine. So I've never had a real job. I've been in business off and on since I graduated Lehigh, and I've been serving in community probably 2 years after that. So my son just turned 30, so I've had 25 years in community service, and 27 years in business, you know. So but we didn't always know business. Like I was in
Mm.
business at first, right? But I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
know business. Like
Oh
I
yeah,
was in
yeah,
the
yeah,
I
yeah.
was in the music business at first. That was easy because growing up in Harlem, I had real relationships. Cameron and Mace were on my basketball team. I played basketball for the Gauchos, which was one of the biggest teams in New York City. So, I went to school with Dougie Fresh's little brother Kashaka, so I knew people. So getting in the industry was easy. You know, I still manage, two Grammy Award winning producers, right? Because they grew up in my neighborhood, and I knew a little bit more business than they did, and they knew I wouldn't cheat them. So I've been with them, 20 years, you know. But relationships, when we're building real relationships, I think the most important thing is to care, right? To care,
Hmm.
uh, when people are going through things, because even no matter how much money you have, right? Everyone has challenges. Like, one of my friends, Barry Shore, who was the minister of joy. Me and him together passed out well over 2 million smile cards. He was a billionaire when he woke up as a paraplegic. Money couldn't fix that. Prayer,
Mm.
humility, and a commitment to God that he would live a life of philanthropy. After that, help fix that. But I say that to say, right, no matter how much money you have, there are things that money can't buy. If you can be
Hmm.
in the gap in those times when money can't buy, you can not only become someone that people count on, you can become someone that people look for. Let me say that for you again. If you can step in the gap to provide the things that money can't buy, you will not only be someone that people count on, you'll be someone that people look for. Like
Mm.
if you're down, you can call me, or I'm more than likely gonna call you if you make it known in any way. Right? If you put it on a social media, if you send it, if you put it anywhere, I'm usually gonna call you, ask how can I help you? Ask, how can I provide a smile? Ask, what's going on? Because sometimes you just need to listen. You know, one of the things that I'm learning, especially with dealing with my young gang members, is most people just need to be listened to. They need to be
Hmm.
listened to and they need a hug, right? A heart to heart hug can change a lot, right? Because it's a real connection. How do you build real relationships? Sometimes I built every relationship with a hug, right? You've gotten a
Copy,
hug, right? Like everyone gets a hug,
copy.
because it's a heart to heart connection. I make sure that you feel my heartbeat as I feel yours.
Copy, copy that. It's again. It's a space, man. That I have really started cultivating the milestones and stuff like that. And I look back and I'm like, man, throughout all this time where I thought I was failing, those were actually points to remember. Those were pain points to remember. Like, wait a minute, this didn't feel good. Why didn't this feel good? And when you reflect, and then now the wins were a different type of a place. But one of the things I noticed is that they were more like mile markers, not destinations, right? So it was like, oh, mile marker one was here, mile marker two was here. Mile marker one
Yeah,
felt bad, mile marker felt two, but it was never the destination. I didn't get stuck at those mile markers. And could you imagine life if you're traveling on a road where you only get, if every time you hit a mile marker, you stopped and you thought about and so but you're ultimately you got to pass each mile marker to get to a destination. And so looking back, it's celebrating that though, because if you've traveled and driven cross country or driven throughout a couple of different states, right? it's actually a great feeling sometimes where, especially if you're heading home from somewhere you drove, let's say you drove to Atlanta for something, right? And you're driving back, you you're you're driving back, right? And every state that you pass through on your way to PA, you're like, man, okay, I'm getting here. First you're in North Carolina, then in South Carolina, then North Carolina, then Maryland, then you're traveling to DFW, and then all of a sudden you're on 95 North in Delaware, and then you get off the 95 North to from 95 North, you're getting on to the you get stuck in traffic on the Conshohocken curve, getting on 476, and then you get on 476. Every time you went through a whole different state, you felt like, man, I'm just that much closer. I'm just that much closer to home, right? But if you stopped at those states and where it felt good and everything, you're never going to make it home. And I think that that's over time. But it's also a great thing to stop. What I used to do when I would travel like that was stop, grab, go. Every time I made it through a good state, I stop at a thing, go. There's a moment I would maybe go grab something to drink and just take a moment to reflect that it made it out of this one stage and maybe to the next stage. And I think that that's super important for you guys. Is that if you're building long-term connections and you're building long-term nurturing your network, celebrate not only your own milestones and professional wins, but do it for others. Celebrate others when they're
Celebrate
doing
everyone.
things that you feel as though that they're that are winning. It's in those moments, even if you're not okay. It's not everything about sitting on putting out like an email or a Facebook post or something. Sometimes it's, yo, bruh, you're walking down the street. Man, I
Yep.
saw what you were doing. That was pretty dope. Keep up the hard work. I'm watching. Right? You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? That's the nature. That's been the nature of our business for the last decade. Our relationship for the
Yeah.
last decade, bro, has been
Yeah.
that, man. Like, oh, I see what you're
Yeah.
doing. And so it's through those moments that you get to nurture things, right? But
And I wanna hold on. Before you go there, I wanna also, because what you said made me think of a quote that I in my book. When I say success is a journey, but you cannot get mad when somebody wants to get off on their stop.
oh
Right? A
yeah,
lot of us get upset at our friends and our families because success for them, that my ex-wife used to say I never wanted to be a millionaire. I said, oh, we can't be together. Right? Success for her, because having a lot of money for me allows me to make more impact. So I
mm-hmm.
saw money differently than her. Right? So I couldn't get mad at her that was her stop. I just had to realize that
Yeah,
I'm still going. Right?
yeah,
There are people along the journey that's going to get off on their stop. Enjoy your time together. Don't get mad
yeah,
at them when their
yeah,
stop has come, right? Because we get so
yeah,
upset. Like, what do you mean you're done, right? I used to, especially young past, right? Young past used to believe everybody deserved to go on this journey with him, right?
yeah,
Especially everyone that worked hard with him. What do you mean
yeah, yeah,
you're
yeah, yeah.
fine over here? What do you mean we're nowhere near where we need to be? You know, 50-year-old past goes. I understand. you know, because not everybody sees success the same way. Not everybody wants the same things. Right? You may want a Tesla. They may want a BMW. You don't tell them that their BMW is terrible
Mm-hmm.
because you're a Tesla fan, right? We have to learn
Copy.
to appreciate our people. But one of the things, especially those of us who are focusing on being highly successful, right? We have to be willing to be more forgiving and more loving to the people that we have to let go along the way. That's why I always say you let them come with love and go with
Mm-hmm.
love because we
Mm-hmm.
never know when they may come back.
Bro, I could give you a testament to that right there is um uh I'll take you guys, if you guys know that Pete and I, if you've been listening for the last year, almost 2 years now, you know that we used to announce on the podcast that Pete and I used to be partners with the group Friends of Pete, right?
Mhm.
And about 3 or 4 months ago, Pete decided that, hey, things are shifting. He wants to take it and become a he wants to shift and become a single member. He kind of wants to change the format because of some things going on and what I mean. So he's like, hey, I'm changing the format of the way Friends of Pete is. We're doing things at Friends of Pete. Now, 7 years of a business relationship for that, one could take that and be insulted in all types of ways, right? But there's a moment of growth that happened in me over the years that where I saw was like, hey, he's ready to take it to another level for him. After all, the name of the group is Friends of Pete, and so be it. But here we are now, which then opened up opportunities for me to go back into projects that I had not been working on because I've been focusing on all of that stuff over there. And so but yet every the scuttlebutt around the way is that you and Pete broke up, right? And I'm like, no, we just chose to do something different, right? Pete's decided that this is the way he wanted to go, and I'm okay with that being the way that he wants to go. But who's on every Monday morning where you can actually get the technology to act right is Pete, right? So it's like so you hear the scuttlebutt, you hear all the different things are going on from people and all the different conversations and the gossip and all that. And they're like, yeah, you're wrong, but I'll go ahead and let you think that because I'm not trying to correct you. You're going to look stupid, but that's so and so forth, right? But the point that I'm making is that you got to be okay with it. I like it. I like it. I call it I call it the train. One of the things I love getting on is
Mhm.
my dad when I was growing up was on was worked for is an electrician for Amtrak, and we used to take uh, our road trips was with that we would get on the auto train in DC and take a ride down to it. We would go to Florida and other places, right? And but one of the things about getting on the train is not everybody who gets on the train at the stop where you got on is going to finish the ride with you, right? But the other
Mhm.
thing about the train is that everybody has an opportunity to get back onto the train because it's got to come back the other way, right? And so, how you
Mhm.
allow people to get off the train is ultimately one day how you may greet them when they get back on. And so, if you're not paying attention to you and who you're allowing these growth moments in yourself, right? You like yourself, old young boy Darnell would have been okay with just everybody cutting everybody off, but now Darnell, the almost 50-year-old, is in a different space, man. And so it is it's a tricky street to drive on, but you just have to be focused and the fact that you're doing right by people and you're doing right by yourself and by your network. And so here before we get out of here, guys, look, I just want to give you couple quick points. Always consider a methodology of communication. I choose LinkedIn. That's how I choose. LinkedIn is how I communicate with everybody. If you're part of my network, know that you can find out what I'm doing, where I am, on most cases on LinkedIn. I don't really use other social medias outside of it, but because it's my primary platform, right? Check-ins. If you know anything about me, if you know me, if you can ask Mike, if you don't get every now and again just this random what's up text from me, it's like, well, did you want something? That's what I'm known for. Is like, did you want something? I just do that. It's just like, it's just, hey, what's up? And they're like, people are like, okay, dude, you text me what's up, and then I didn't hear anything from you. It wasn't really me wanting anything. It was really just saying, hey, what's up? It's like if you're walking down the street and you see somebody you go, hey, what's up? You're not always trying to have a conversation. You're busy, but you thought about, you saw them, you thought about it, boom, it was good, right? And then third thing is turn off one-off relationships and or interactions. Stop that. I think that we have to really get out of that. People are defined, just you guys got to are defined by the value that they bring to you as an individual or as a corporation or what have you, right? The one-offs are the most dangerous ones because they're not necessarily there for you to create depth. And right now, I think in this season, you're not necessarily with the impact of AI and impact of other things, right? You're not going to want it's not going to be the same. And you want as much interaction or much in depth or worthwhile interactions as humanly possible in order to establish yourself, right? Because if you're establishing these relationships, it's what's going to happen longer term. You create your tribe, and it's through the creation of your tribe. You guys who are listening, that especially everybody who's been on every week, you know, you guys are part of my tribe. I look forward to my Monday mornings with you. And soon in July, there's going to be Mondays. There's going to be a couple of new live shows. There's going to be some live streaming stuff happening and all that stuff. But you guys are part of that tribe. You guys are part of that network. And so I want to say thank you, Paz and everything, for jumping on, man. And sharing with everybody. It's like I said, it's been a crazy couple of years, bro. But you're winning, we're winning, no matter how big or how small, man. We're all winning out here, and I appreciate you taking the time and the difference that you're making within the community, not just in the business world, man. One of the biggest projects that I can't wait for is putting our working out something so we can get our wellness hub up there with you guys as you give
Yeah,
out food every week, man. That's the next phase for me, is to get that going
yeah.
up there. We just hired some new staff members. I'm interviewing somebody for a position, an intern, after we get off from here for this
And that's
project, man.
funny. Like people don't even realize I do that too, because we do so much. When you're a good leader, you do so much you don't need to put your name on, right? You just do it because it's the right thing to do. And you know what's different between business and service, right? Business brings me money, service brings me satisfaction, right? And you gotta do both, right? You need business because business.
Oh, I think we lost him again.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Can
we're
you hear
back.
me? Yeah,
You're back.
I said business and service, right? We all need business in order to live, but service in order to give real meaning and depth to life, right? Know the difference so that you can provide it at the highest quality and live at the highest quality.
For sure, brother. For sure. So look, as we do every week, man, what are you getting into this week, man? Let the people know what you're getting into, where they can find you, and what have you. And then I'm gonna come back with that one thing.
Oh, yes, sir. So we have launched our Hip Hop on the Wall art series. So we'll be doing Meet the Artist events this week. So July 3rd, before 4th of July weekend goes, we have the artist Pickable, who's a local artist, doing a Meet the Artist seminar. And then on July 5th, we are going to be teaching production to the youth. So if you have any kids, any youth that want to learn how to produce or just want to play around just to see if they're interested. Our DJ Meltdown will be giving a free seminar to the youth, as part of our Hip Hop on the Wall series. We have art that came in from all over the world to bring into the Lehigh Valley so that we can really show the greatness that's here.
Copy that. Copy that. And then your philanthropic work. What are you getting into this week, man? Are you doing anything for that?
Always, always, every Tuesday and Thursday, we have the food bank, so we feed 50 to 200 families a week. So we're always going to do that. So anyone that needs food, you can always come by the caring place and get fed. And then, we have our kids program. So this is a week for our kids to get to study on. Last week they were out vending, you know, One week on, they're renting, the other week on, they're working on themselves, working on their business so that they can
Mm-hmm.
become better business owners. So this is our week to work inside. So they'll be back outside. And they launched their businesses in the middle of a heat wave and didn't back down. Proud of those
For
babies.
sure. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. That's good stuff, brother. That's good stuff, man. Well, look, brother, this definitely won't be your last time on, but we appreciate you spending the time your first time on, brother. Looking forward to getting more information and having you as a regular visitor on the show, brother. But look, this week, everybody, reach out to 2 or 3 individuals who you haven't spoken to or spoken with in a while. Ask about their recent wins, challenges, or maybe even a project that they're working on. Focus on reconnecting without, I repeat, without an agenda, just to reestablish meaningful, a meaningful or impactful relationship and or connection. That's what this week is about. That's my challenge to you guys this week, man, is to get out there, connect with somebody you haven't connected with in a while, and just see how they're doing. Check and see how you can deepen the relationship. It's the summertime. It's the 4th of July coming up this week. There's a lot of transition and transactions that are happening this week. And if you get a chance to, man, make somebody else's day, because it's always worth it, man. Deliver value before ever asking for value in return. That's what we're all about here on Power Connector Conversations. It's about networking. It's about marketing. It's about business development. And so this summer, kicking off, the thing that I would love for you guys to do is, if you see in the corner of my of the show this week, get a copy of my book. If you would like a copy of my book, I think to my regular listeners, if you shoot me a message on LinkedIn today about it, if you're a regular listener and you have to connect with me on LinkedIn Messenger, I'm going to gift you a copy of my new book on our digital copy of my new book for your Kindle, or for, you can use it on Google Read, for my next book, Networking Alchemy, guys. I'm super excited. My book launched on my birthday last week. I'm not gonna say the hard copy, the paperback will be with me in a few days. I'm excited about getting those and getting the touch, because this is my 4th book. And so I'm excited about things that are happening. I hope you guys make this a blessed week for yourselves. If anything, I'm going to also share how you can get a copy, or if you want to help, if you guys want to help push the book, if you guys want to help me get more sales out there, I'll share the link on my LinkedIn in the next day or so. So I appreciate you. We love you. I can't say that enough. It would not be a show on Monday mornings without you listening. If you're here live, I love it. If you're listening after the show, it's a great thing. But Paz, thank you for jumping on. Thank you guys for listening. Take care. Have a great week. God bless. Look forward to talking with you on Monday morning for Power Connector Conversations.